Yesterday was a very important day, a significant day, a momentous day. The trade deadline came and went for 2024. The first time ever, it was the Tuesday after Week 9. That was proposed by the Browns, who really didn't take full advantage of the fact that, number one, they stink. Number two, the Deshaun Watson contract is going to keep one hand tied behind their back for the next few years. And number three, they should have traded off every veteran contract they could for draft picks, cheap, young players to help your team be competitive when you've got this ball and chain of the Deshaun Watson contract dragging you through the next 3 years. That was the irony, if that's the proper use of the term, and I never know, but who cares? Bottom line is yesterday was the trade deadline. There were some deals done, some of the names that were percolating. It finally happened. A lot of times, we're watching the names that we think are going to be traded, and they aren't. It just doesn't happen. Yesterday, in a couple of different respects, it did. And the biggest name to move, the 11th pick in the 2017 draft, the guy who was taken by the Saints after they were leapfrogged by the Kansas City Chiefs when the Chiefs took Patrick Mahomes, which is who the Saints would have taken if the Chiefs hadn't done that. The Saints take Marshon Lattimore. Lattimore gets traded to the Commanders. The Commanders. Who would have dreamed the Commanders, Michael Holley, would have been buyers at the trade deadline for this year?
Nobody would have. I give him so much respect. Adam Peters, I've known him for a long time. When he was here with the Patriots years ago, went to San Francisco, obviously did a great job there. So he's a smart football guy, and I think they looked at the situation. They know this is a perfect trade because they know who they are. They know that this is still a roster that needs another draft, another round of free agency to really get it where they want to get it. But right now, you got an opportunity. You're right in the mix with Philadelphia in the NFC East. The Giants are out of it. Dallas, for all intents and purposes, out of it. And so you've got some excitement around your fan base. You're much further along than you thought you would be. Why not go for it? Why not address an area of weakness? Because that was one of their cornerback situation, not great. And I actually think their number 2 wide receiver, if they had done that, that would have been just a chef's kiss of a day. But I think this is such a good move for a team that is on its way, but then looks at the current situation and says, we got to go for it. You never know. Great move for them.
The Saints get a 3rd-round pick in 2025, a 4th-round pick in 2025, and a 6th-round pick in 25. Washington gets Lattimore plus a 5th-round pick in 2025. This started several years ago where these trades have on the back end a swap of picks where the team that acquires the player gets some late round pick in exchange for a later round pick on the back end. And it's like the little grains of rice on the scale. Like, I feel like they try too hard to make it look like they really hammered this out. Like, we've got to put this phony flop of a 6 and a 7 or a 5 and a 6 to make it look like we really worked hard to negotiate this deal.
Mike, put it this way. If we were talking real estate, this is a buyer's market. It was certainly a buyer's market for all the contenders. I heard you and Sasquatch talking about the teams on Monday. The teams there are a handful of teams that really have an opportunity to win the whole thing. Washington was not on your list, but okay, they are maybe that next tier down where they're doing a lot better than expected. And if you go shopping for elite talent, the prices are not as high as you would expect. I mean, even Lattimore is a really good cornerback, a multiple Pro Bowler, and you give up a 3rd rounder. Essentially, that's the highest price you paid, a 3rd rounder, and you got some, as you said, you got some filler back. But all the contenders who really went out and said, hey, we need this to improve our team, nobody gave up anything that made you say, whoa, oh, you really are going for it now. Why would you give up a 2nd-round pick, or why would you give up a 1st-round pick? Nobody really had to do that. So it makes all the sense in the world to go for it right now if you think you even have an outside chance.
Well, NFL media pointed out yesterday, for the first time since 2001, at the trade deadline, every team still had its 1st-round pick going into the next draft. and still owns that first-round pick. All 32 teams for 2025 now, and it's the first time in 23 years, have that pick. And they can't do anything with that pick until the new league year begins in March of 2025. And then at that point, you can have first-round picks swapped, and teams move up, teams move down, teams acquire extra first-round picks like the Vikings did from the Texans last year. You can trade for players, whatever, but none of that can happen until March. So every team now has, for the first time since 2001 trade deadline, all of their first-round picks. So, yeah, there wasn't anything more than a 3. And, look, guys are available, but at the end of the day, someone's got to give the team what it wants in order to do the deal. And the Chiefs had been linked to Lattimore. That was the vibe over the weekend, and I scratched on that, not in the zika way, but in the normal scratching on the surface of potential news way. It's getting worse, not better. The more I do it, it's getting worse. Like the first time was the best, and I'm too self-conscious of it now. But
second time was pretty good too.
Okay, it's starting to slip. I'm not really thinking about it. I got to get in the right zone. But the Chiefs had put out some feelers a few weeks ago. I'd learned over the weekend about corners, and they never really heard back. And my guess is the Chiefs are willing to do deals on their own terms. So, hey, if you're willing to trade Marshon Lattimore, here's what we'd be willing to give you. Period. That's it. Oh, so you mean that's the start? No, that's it. It's not negotiation. I'm telling you, if you give us a call if you think you want to move him for this. Otherwise, don't call. And they never heard. I assume that's how the conversations went because they never heard back from anybody. And I don't know how many teams were involved at the end of the day yesterday, but the Chiefs had been linked to Lattimore. I'd like to think that maybe the Ravens would have been thinking about Lattimore since they ultimately did trade for Tre'Davious White with the Rams. But the Commanders made the move. And the Commanders, look, it's not really desperation, it's opportunity. And they're good. Are they good enough to go into Detroit and win in the postseason? Are they good enough to go into San Francisco and win in the postseason? Can they go into Philly if the Eagles end up winning the division, which right now I would make the Commanders the favorite, but who knows? That's really the question. Unless you're going to be the 1 seed, can you go on the road in the postseason and win? And I think adding Marshon Lattimore is an attempt by the Commanders to take an unexpectedly good position and make it better. And maybe, just maybe, that one move they make at the right time is the thing that will equip them to have the confidence necessary to go in and take down a better team, a team with a better record, a team that's going to be favored. Like, if it was Commanders at Lions today in a playoff game, I figured Detroit would be favored by 7.5. I don't think that's wrong. That would be my guess. So you got to do something to make up that gap. You got to do something to show up and beat the team that's got the experience, that's got the motivation. You're not supposed to be there. You need to get your players to think we are supposed to be here, and bringing in a guy like Marshon Lattimore might help psychologically prepare the Commanders to accept that, hey, you guys aren't average. You're potentially great. Now go do it.
Mike, I love the way you put it, especially with the contrast. I'm going to put the split screen between the Chiefs mentality and the Commanders mentality. Okay, last year, I'm watching the Chiefs on their playoff run, yet another playoff run, championship run. And I look at Trent McDuffie and L'Jarius Sneed, and I said, man, this is old school. This is like Lester Hayes and Mike Haynes. I mean, like those guys just lock everybody down. It's going to be difficult. You see what they did in the Super Bowl to San Francisco, a great offense. They just couldn't, those receivers couldn't get going. They couldn't separate from these guys who were just on them, who were just sticking to them. So when they lost Sneed, I said, okay, it's going to be tough for Kansas City. They're 8-0. They still have a great defense. I'd make the argument they're a defensive team more than they're an offensive team. And so they know, okay, we don't need, to get where we want to go, we don't need Marshon Lattimore to do it. It'd be nice. It will give us the same look that we had last year, but we're doing pretty well without him. But the Commanders, if you're going to go to the playoffs, the playoffs are all about looking at your weaknesses and just pouncing on it. I'm going to make you pay for what you don't have. And before this trade, if you looked at the Commanders, you say, okay, in the playoff game, we're going to attack the other corner. We're going to attack. They don't have anybody in the slot who should be in the slot. They don't have another outside corner. We're going over there. We're going to attack them. Now, You can't necessarily do that. Doesn't make them favorites in the conference, but they had more desperation to do it than the Chiefs did, and I'm glad they did, because you ask, can they go into Detroit? Can they go to Philadelphia if it comes down to that and win a playoff game? Now you say, maybe. Maybe they can. Before this trade, you say, all right, their biggest weakness is going to come back to bite them.
And hey, this trade may help them get to the point where teams have to go there to the worst stadium in the National Football League and play games there in the postseason. You're still going to be facing teams that travel well, like the Lions. We saw what they did in Green Bay in the rain and the wind on Sunday. But still, this is a team that, and I like the idea, you're mortgaging some of your future, but I like the idea that they recognize the brass ring is in reach, and I didn't expect it to be. That's not going to keep me from trying to grab it. It's going to make me try to grab it even more aggressively because I didn't expect it to be there so quickly. Hi, it's Mike Florio. Thanks for watching PFT on YouTube. Hit subscribe for the latest news and analysis from Pro Football Talk.